This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. I hope you're ready to sell more, sell smarter, sell better. Meridith Elliott Powell is in the house. How are you, my friend?
I am great, thanks. Really looking forward to this conversation and being here.
So I want to talk about the MEP story, and then I want to talk a little bit about sales and your fantastic books, and then also this current crazy environment that we're in. But just to set the stage, you are a sales and sales leadership guru. How did that come to be? What was the professional journey that brought you to doing what you're doing today?
So basically, I have kind of a varied career, to put it lightly. I seem to jump into industries at times of crisis. My career started in travel and tourism when a hurricane hit the Myrtle Beach area. Then it leapt into healthcare right when Medicare and Medicaid started to get extreme cutbacks. And then I got into banking right when community banks and that whole industry started to change. And the only way to really succeed, in my opinion, in a crisis or when the company's got to go in extreme change is to learn how to sell. It's good for employees because if you can sell, you will always have a job. You can always work anywhere. Anybody always wants you. And you can sell your way out of a crisis. You can't cut your way out of it. So as I just started to look around, I started in my career at the age of 25, and here I look back, close to 30 years later. And to me, it's the only real path to success. It's the skill I want to give every 6-year-old because you'll just always work. So I don't know. I just kind of got there out of necessity. Every situation I got myself into, sales was the answer. So I got good at that.
What was your progression like when you first started out? So I'm guessing you had like an inside real job, quote unquote, before launching your entrepreneurial ventures. When you first started out as a consultant, as a speaker, as a solo expert, what were some of the things that were surprising? What were some of the happy accidents or the not so happy accidents that ended up being brick walls or dead ends?
The reason I went out on my own to begin with was because I crossed my 40th birthday, and 40 to me is like the power age, right? Because you're old enough to be taken seriously, but you're young enough that if it doesn't work out, you could go back to the corporate world and somebody will still hire you, right? But the reason I went out on my own was twofold. Number one is that I didn't come into sales lightly. I hated it. I was raised by a mother who was basically militant about etiquette, and she just taught me that selling was rude. And I couldn't sell in the way that everybody else sold. And so I had to build my own methodology for how to be successful at it. And that methodology started to work for a lot of people. So I wanted to take that methodology on the road. The other is I'm a strategic planner by training. I've actually got a degree in strategic planning. And it blew my mind how many companies were out there trying to grow with no thought of where they were headed, how they were going to get there, or any plan for contingency. And so those two things really drove me to start my own business and my passion for getting out there and helping companies learn those things.
Before we turned on the mics, I was also giving you huge kudos. Your website's beautiful, by the way, totally amazing. Great design, great copy, very compelling. But the headline right now, and don't hold me to it because this might change, the news is changing hourly, daily. So we're not sure what the headline's going to be when people are listening in. But if you're listening fairly soon, headline says Success Redefined, Business Growth, Sales, Leadership Strategies Turn Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage. And the first thing I asked you is, Meredith, that is so up to the minute. That is so current. That's exactly what people need right now in the time of this turmoil and crisis. How long have you had that up there? Was it a couple weeks, or what was your answer?
I've had it up there for 2 years. I started the research on the book that'll be out in the fall 2 years ago. And as I shared with you, the reason I started talking about uncertainty is because we always tend to view uncertainty as a negative. And while we certainly don't expect a pandemic, the companies that I see succeed, really succeed, are the ones that are building uncertainty, whether it's positive or negative, into their strategic process.
Let's talk about your strategic process, the way you built the business. I know some people start consulting and they get into speaking, and then they get into courses, then they get into masterminds. Take any of those, that might be an entry point, and they start doing the other things. Were you purely speaking and training at the beginning and these other things evolved? Were you purely consulting at the beginning, or how did you start to diversify your menu of services? And then let's also walk through just very briefly what that menu consists of today. How did you stair step your empire to offer these other distribution methods?
I started out really strictly a strategic planner. I mean, that was really the first 2 years I would go in and I would do strategic plans for companies.
And that was primarily around growth and growth strategies.
Yeah. And then I had an expertise in building the business strategy and then getting the entire team to get passionate about implementing the strategy. So I always build myself as bringing the process, the money, and the people together to build your plan. You've got to have all three. And so the companies that I worked for, I was really on my own around 2004, 2005. And for anybody who remembers, 2004 was the last peak in the economy before we started plummeting towards 2008. And the companies that I did strategies for, they had a lot of luck. We were really doing well in 2007, 2008. And people started to say, would you come talk to us? And so I did the obligatory go to the Rotary Club, go to the Kiwanis Club, go to the Ladies Garden Club, whatever I would do to do it. And then eventually somebody paid me $500. And I had no idea you could get paid for this. So I went to an NSA meeting in our chapter and somebody said, you should write a book. And I wrote a book all about how to succeed through 2008, post 2008, and the speaking took off from there. And at that point, I let go of a lot of other things. I let go of training. I let go of strategy. I let go of things and really just became a keynoter. And it was really just about 2 years ago that I started to build strategies back in. I started to build coaching programs back in and started to launch the online piece. I'm also an author for LinkedIn Learning. And a couple of years ago, I'm up to about 8 courses for them right now. So my whole repertoire includes strategy, coaching, online courses, and then speaking, which now means virtual or live streaming or however anybody will take me.
Right. Wow. Really interesting. Now, walk us through kind of the portfolio, because I went to the website and we should all be going to the website, MeridithElliottPowell.com. The links for everything that Meredith is going to share is under this episode. When you go to thespeakingshow.com, you're probably there right now. Links directly under the episode. Check out all the links, all the goodies to connect with Meredith. But there's a mastermind. Mm-hmm. There is kind of coaching and consulting, some package, some open-ended. How did each of those light bulb moments say, oh, I should offer this, or, oh, I should package it this way? Because I think a lot of people right now, they're looking at everything. They're looking at their business from square zero and saying, how do I pivot? How do I reorganize? How do I reprioritize my distribution methods for this new upside down virtual remote world? How did you, by choice, luckily not by necessity, how did you decide what the next distribution method was going to be? And then how'd you roll it out? How'd you start getting clients, et cetera?
Great question. I'm going to tell you how I did it. And then I'm going to tell you what I'm in the process of doing right now. Because how I have built everything, and it comes back to the last corporate job I had. The last corporate job I had was in a bank, and I was charged with writing the strategy to take the company from a regional organization to a global organization. And that bank has done phenomenal today. But the thing that I realized was you can't have process in a vacuum. That process is only as good as the people who want to implement it. So when I went out, and even when I started building sales strategies for companies, I still had to teach people how to make money, how the company worked, really the fundamentals, the business acumen. And then I had to teach sales leadership, engagement, influence, and followership. So everything to me that I built was when I first started building sales, I wouldn't just sell a sales strategy in a vacuum. I would sell a course on business acumen, and I would sell a sales leadership course to go with that. That really led to the fact that I was talking to CEOs, and one of the biggest problems at that time, and really up until this crisis, was we have no leadership bench. We have nobody really coming behind us. And so I started offering 12-month programs for large corporations to build their leadership bench. And then it became, why couldn't I offer something like this for small businesses? And those became masterminds from people in non-competing businesses, whether we were talking about sales or whether we were talking about leadership. Fundamentally, what do you need to do to grow your business? But I think the key has been, and this is what I'm doing right now, is I really, really listen to the pain point that my audience is talking about. and I revamp and I create my programs based on that. And I got no ego attached to what I offer. If it's not working, it's going. If it needs to be renamed, I will rename it, because when we come out the other side of this, I'm not really sure at this point what I'll be offering. I'm trying to use this time to just really pay attention.
Wow. There's so many profound things that you just said. Where to take the next question? Well, let me ask you this, because I think this is really critical right now, or in any crisis. And, sometimes the rest of the economy is fine. That's not the situation now. Mm-hmm. And a specific industry might be in crisis or in meltdown mode. So this is evergreen advice I'm asking for. When our buyers are frozen and scared and hunkering down and cutting everything, and they're hurting, and their clients and customers are hurting, and everything is imploding in a given industry or market. And here we are selling, right? We're trying to help them. We're really offering value, but they're almost in a organizational state of shock that they can't hear, they can't listen. They're like, no, Meredith, we're working on this. We can't talk to you right now. We're so busy with this. And of course, what you can help them with is the exact this that they're talking about. How do we open conversations, or even how do we go back to clients that we've already worked with when they're under this extreme duress and they're practically losing their minds?
I had a young sales professional reach out to me yesterday and ironically asked this exact question. I mean, he's selling into healthcare, right? I mean, there's an industry that's just exploding. You would think you would be able to sell. And he feels like people are almost irritated that he's quote unquote bothering them. And the way that I phrase it, and I got this phrasing from Bill Bacharach, I think it's one of the most brilliant things that I've heard in a long time. He said, you need to be thinking about sales in 3 phases right now. And phase 1 is, what are you doing to remain visible and add so much value so that people know that you are there and you're helping them? But you got to, like, every ounce of your body has got to be focused on just helping them. Phase 2 is when they get through the shock, what can you do to help them sustain the business and stabilize things? And people will start to be willing to invest in something.
And these are words I just want to point out for the folks listening. You probably want to re-listen to this interview about 3-4 times. The words you're using right now, Meredith, are the words that you should be using with your clients. Sustain, preserve, protect, extend the runway, conserve your resources, pivot, flex. These are the kinds of words that they're using. So when Meredith says, help them sustain, help them maintain, help them protect, that's the value prop that they are tuned into right now, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you picked up on that, because that is the exact language I'm using. Like, I've got a client that I'm going to talk to this morning that is in the events industry. I mean, what they do for a living is put on massive sporting events. Their business has been wiped out. And when they reached back out to me and I said, look, let's talk. We're going to run this in 3 phases, and you're going to move through the phases as you need to move through the phases. And I'll even tip you off as to when you're ready. Right. But I built that trust and I built that relationship, and you got to get that foundation in there first. And that's phase 1. Phase 2, you're helping them sustain. And then phase 3 is where I'm afraid we are all going to miss the boat as sales professionals, is we are not going to be prepared to help people come out of this. It isn't like a veil is just going to be lifted and this economy is going to come back. People are going to be confused. They're going to be gun shy as to exactly what to do. And what an opportunity for you to be laying the runway to help people get back out there, get to business, and know what to do. So I wouldn't have phrased it that way. Bill Bacharach gave that to me. And like I said, I love it. But that's exactly how I'm running things right now. And I want to say, I'm not exactly sure what those products are going to look like, because I'm having those conversations and pulling that out of my clients.
Now, when you say products, I'm just channeling our listeners. And I think some speakers, consultants, and experts are a little bit terrified, because when you say, hey, they don't want to buy product A, they don't want to buy service A, it's out, it's gone, I'll create something else. Are we actually talking about creating courses, curriculum, binders, notebooks, or are we simply talking about changing the nature of our advisory services, which might include training or coaching or consulting, but we don't need to be in the workshop creating binders for 6 months until we're ready for this pivot, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't put anything rock solid. I just had somebody reach out to me this morning, and I created 2 virtual programs about building relationship and connection with remote workers during a crisis. And then what do you need to do to stay productive and focused? I can't imagine I'm going to be using those a year from now, but other than creating a couple of slides that they can put into a workbook and a little bit of copy on a piece of paper, that's my new product. I mean, I'm trying to create stuff like that.
I love that. So the soundbite that I'm going to attach to that is delivery is the new product development.
That's great.
Help your clients, give them what they need. If it sucks, it was a one-off. If it was awesome, think about productizing and replicating it.
You know, everybody talks about essential workers, and technically we're not essential workers, but I don't really think that's true. I mean, I've called my Chamber of Commerce yesterday and I said, look, what can I do? What can I offer? What do business people need right now? And what content can I create? And I'm laying the runway for 6 months to a year from now when things really come on with my business again. But I don't want to go away right now.
Right. No, absolutely right. Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. Let's also talk about events are being canceled. Some people are canceling or postponing training contracts, consulting contracts. So even we as the experts are being directly impacted, sometimes losing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential business. How do we keep our head up when our world is crumbling, yet we are the healers, we are the experts, we are the advisors? So staying visible is absolutely one thing that we need to do. What else? Just to kind of, if our business have been impacted in some way, we got to stay in the game. We got to stay open. I would even say we have to stay prospecting, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you really have to stay prospecting. I mean, the future business that you're going to get, it is starting right now. You have to understand that people are going to remember what you did in the middle of this. And so when you begin to think about it that way, I think a couple of things that we need to do is, number one, we need to stay busy. I mean, most people that I talk to, and I'm sure you're like this, David, I'm working harder than I've ever worked. And if you're not working harder than you've ever worked, then you're not going to be positioned to come out of this. The other is I have to spend a lot of time learning. Like so much of the research I'm doing right now is what is this going to look like after? What are the experts saying? And that's almost changing daily, but I'm trying to keep up on things. I'm also trying to do a lot of interviews with business owners just to get a feel for what people are going through right now. And if I'm going to offer programs, I've got to be offering them based on best practices I learn about, things that I learn about. I'm also investing a lot of time in taking care of myself. I mean, I'm militant about what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, devoted to my exercise every day because I need to remain healthy and I need to remain strong. I also think you need a little time for some fun with your friends and a little bit of humor and stuff like that. And if you need a little bit of time to whine, go ahead and do that too. Drink it,
Right,
do it.
Exactly. Little Zoom chats, Zoom coffee hours, Zoom cocktail hours.
Yes, absolutely.
I am militant about drinking also, but I think we have different interpretations of what that means.
That's right. Whatever works for you.
Whatever works for you, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about, because I want to go back to your young sales rep who was calling on healthcare and saying, I don't want to be bothering them right now. And we just established this is a time to help more and serve more, but it's also not a time to sell any less. How does our initial approach to new prospects that we've never worked with? I totally get it. We should go back to our current clients, past clients. How are you doing? What can I do to help? What are some door opening strategies now for new business, for new clients that we've never talked to before, but that we have a pretty good, we've done some intelligent prospecting, we've done our homework, we've done our research, and there's a strong likelihood that they need what we do. What is a sensitive, caring way to open some new doors right now?
One thing I do want to say is, and this is one thing that I told the sales rep yesterday, is that I don't care if people respond to you or not. They may not. And it doesn't mean that they're not seeing it. And it doesn't mean that they don't know that you're offering something. So be okay with that. I'm not talking about shooting an email or making a phone call and getting a response. But what I've been doing with prospects is basically if I have made any contact with them before, even if they've not responded, I've just said, I'm offering a lot of services and information to my existing clients, and I want to make sure I'm doing it with some of my prospects as well. And you were top of my list. I'm looking for a way to help. I'm looking for a way to support. Here are tools and resources that I have put together that I think will be valuable for you, for your clients. Please feel free to use and share. And as I continue to do research, uncover more, I'll send it out to you. Please stay safe and healthy. And if there's anything I can do to help you, please do not hesitate to reach out. I've gotten really nice responses, people saying, thanks for thinking of us. Hope you're staying safe and healthy too.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you the next question, which I think I might know the answer to, but like a good courtroom attorney, I'm going to ask the question because I'm hoping to get a certain answer. Let's see how it goes.
Pressure.
I know. Big buildup here. A lot of folks and a lot of the buzz online, Facebook, chat rooms, live streams. Should we be cutting our prices? Should we be sensitive and caring and understand that our prospects are crunched financially? Devastation, record unemployment, massive layoffs. This is not a time to go out, and when they respond and when these door opening strategies that we just talked about work, and they are interested in hiring you above and beyond all the great free resources, is this a time to cut our fees or start discounting? Or what are some factors that you recommend people look at when they're evaluating that for their own business?
Well, one thing I think you've got to consider is I don't know whether you need cash flow or not. And if you do, then can we do another Zoom when this is over and interview and talk about what you need to do to position yourself to always at least buy yourself a year of cash flow, right? But I am assuming that you don't need cash flow. If you do what you need to do. I mean, that's what I would do. I would do what I needed to do to just stay afloat. But the way that I'm positioning it, David, I don't know if this is right, is I'm not discounting, but I am deferring. And I have some clients right now that are in unbelievably healthy situations. I've got more than a few that work for government. I've got more than a few that work in healthcare, which is, let's talk about diversifying your revenue stream for no matter, you should be in different industries. But I've also got some, like I shared with you, that are in the events industry. I've got a couple that have laid off more than half of their workforce. And certainly my fee's not so big that they couldn't pay me, but I'm working with them to say, let's get through this. And when your cash flow comes back on, let's look at it that way. So to me, it's not a matter of, I don't want to discount what I do but I'm definitely open to deferring.
You're extending, you're doing payment plans, you're doing, hey, let's do the first invoice in 90 days, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I'm even saying to people, like I've got one, we're redesigning the business. And so we've gone ahead and we've started, but they don't owe me any money for 90 days.
Nice.
Yeah, but they have the option to pay me. Like I think things are going to turn as the stimulus package goes through and a lot of people get money infused into the business and that sort of calms things down.
Right.
But that was just the way that I approached it.
Well, let's talk about a happier topic, which is your amazing, incredible new book.
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about strategy, succession planning, etc. Who comes next, which you co-authored with the awesome and amazing Mary Kelly. Tell us where that book came from. Tell us about how the two of you put your heads together to co-author this thing and why people may want to look at this right now in the midst of all this craziness, perhaps more so than ever.
When we first started writing the book, it was because there was such a talent crunch of boomers retiring and who was really going to take their place. I think we're probably going to see what we saw after 2008. And we're going to see a lot of 65-year-olds holding on for another 10 years and probably not leave the workforce. But if this crisis has taught us anything, it's that understanding what your critical positions are in your business and having the right people in place so you have depth of those positions and business continuity is more important than ever. But Mary and I we found we both had a passion for this. We started doing some consulting for companies, and then we found a void in the marketplace. Most leadership succession talks about exactly that, leadership at the C-suite. And this book is really about building succession at every level of your organization. I mean, think about your business right now. And if something happened to you or a couple of key people in your company, the question becomes, could the business continue to succeed and thrive? And if the answer to that is no, then you need this book because not only does it lay out the strategies, but the thing that we were so committed to do was make it simple and make it easy to do what we're talking about doing.
And you can do this. I mean, they can buy the book, and they should buy the book, right? Who Comes Next? Leadership Succession Made Easy. Very important. Made easy for regular people, not for HR geeks and, all kinds of charts and graphs and 17-part diagrams. So it's a common sense approach, really, to leadership succession, not just at the top, but at every level. You can do this for an hour. You can do this for a year. So talk about, what does that 1-hour keynote or 1-day training do? And then let's talk about, what's that year-long program? How do people buy it? How do you package it? Because I think a lot of us are thinking, okay, I have this intellectual property, whatever it might be. I can do it for an hour or 2, period, end of sentence. No. Well, what's the full day? What's the multi-day? What's the 90-day? What's the 12-month? No one thinks this far ahead. You have built it as an accordion. Tell us how that works. What's going to be in the speech? What's going to be in the training? What's going to be in the extended professional development program?
Yeah, it's funny for anybody who has, intellectual property out there, everybody listening. The truth is, probably all sizes of organizations need that intellectual property. And so if you have a lot of different avenues to offer it, it's going to appeal to a lot of different people. And that's what we were trying to do this. I mean, really what the keynote is we've got a keynote and we've got a workshop. And the keynote is really the why succession planning is so important, why it's your competitive advantage, and why it ensures the long-term sustainability and profitability of your organization. It's kind of like the tease with a couple of nuggets in it and to pull you in and get you interested. The full day workshop is really for anybody who is looking to do it themselves, almost like a train the trainer type of a thing. The online course is probably for smaller organizations, somebody who wants to get in and learn how to do it for their small organization. And the year-long program is for larger companies that really have to develop that next level of talent. And we offer that both virtually and in person. And interestingly enough, we have found a much larger market using the same material and marketing in just several different ways. In fact, I'm going to go back to pretty much so many of my programs and start to diversify more how I offer them.
So just to pick up on what you just said, Meredith, you're saying that by having these different levels of depth, duration, and detail, you've got a whole bunch of new clients and new interest, because it's not just the keynote or just the course or just the 1-year program, but it's almost like self-service on a menu. Do you want small, medium, large, or super size? And there's going to be buyers at every level.
Yeah. And I also feel like it makes both Mary and I better presenters. Because, one of the things that I love about having diverse products is that I learn so much from a coaching session that gives me a better story in a keynote. From forcing me to make a keynote or write a book, I have to have an opinion and I have to be able to back that opinion up, which makes me a better coach or makes me, a better consultant. And so I feel like the value in each one of those makes me more of an expert in what I'm trying to do.
Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Now, let me also ask you, because this is kind of the elephant in the room about niche, target market. We've already violated all these rules. Meredith, she's leadership, she's succession, she's sales, she's strategy, she's all these different things. And now it's like, Fortune 500, big company, small company, medium-sized company, any size company, come on down. Obviously, you can help all of these different companies. From an intentional prospecting and where you spend most of your time and energy, how do you know kind of when to feed which pipeline and when to prospect for which program? And then also, how do you overcome, and you have overcome it brilliantly, but how do you overcome this generalist syndrome where, but she's offering everything, right? Yeah. One day it's leadership, one day it's sales, one day it's strategy, one day it's innovation and how to pivot and how to flex and what's she really good at? Now you've done it, but I know that you've also consciously done it. So what was the secret to diversifying while still specializing?
When I first joined NSA, I fell into that trap of I needed to niche and the definition of niching. And I came out of financial services. So everything for me was to niche into financial services. And here's what I found. When I worked in financial services, some of my clients I loved, some of them I couldn't stand and I hated working for them. And a lot of them I found kind of slow to move and slow to want to do things. So I very much have a target market, very, very much. But my target market is defined differently than most people define a target market. I am looking for a CEO or a C-suite leader who is passionate about revolutionizing their industry. They're incredibly successful, but they want to blow it up and go to another level. They are incredibly confident, but at the same time, I don't know if their ego is so big or it's relaxed enough that they want advice and they want input and they see me as the expert and they're ready to take their team, their company and the next level. And they usually fall somewhere between 50 and 60 years old and they're moving into legacy. So very much when I am interviewing and I am talking to somebody, I don't care if you have 2 people, I don't care if you have 700,000 people, that's who I'm looking for. And when I find that person, we're going all in and we're going deep. I typically do keynotes for them. I do workshops for them. I do trainings for them. I go deep with them. And I've got entrepreneurs that are sitting at home in front of a computer and don't hire anybody to CEO that I have done all of her leadership development and succession planning training for the last 8 years. So I'm looking for a person. My target market just doesn't look like everybody else's.
How do we find those aggressive, fast growth CEOs that are all in, super energized, very ambitious, but not with the huge egos where they're arrogant or complacent? We could talk to every CEO and interview them, which I don't think is what you do. Do we use the media? Do we use Fast Company? Do we use Fortune's 100 best places to work in America? Do we use the Business Journal? What is your radar system for these CEOs popping up on your radar going, ooh, Meredith, talk to me. Ooh, Meredith, you need to get to know me and my company because we're up to some cool things. What's the radar system?
So it's twofold for me. Number one is the way I found this niche. Like I said, I would just turn around and some people I was working with, I'm like, oh, I'm going to hit my head up against the wall if I have to talk to this person again. And the way I found the niche was I started to identify some of the people I loved working with. And I started to see some things that they had in common. So number one is I just started to ask them for who else in their industry or did they know that I ought to work with. The other is that I am really consistent about putting videos and content and things out on social media. And very much a lot of my target market ends up finding me. Now, I'm not saying they pick up the phone and they say, Meredith, I want to work with you. It's not like that. But I start to see who's following me, who's paying attention to me, who's resharing my stuff, who's commenting on my stuff. And from there, I start, when I do the reach out, I know that that's a good shot that that person is probably somebody for me. But, David, something else I want to say is when I'm prospecting, I really am prospecting from a place of power. I'm not doing it from a place of need. Not that I don't need work, but I'm trying to sniff out. I'm interviewing you as much as you're interviewing me because I want to be successful. And so if you're not going to be somebody that's going to be like that, I know it isn't going to work. So it's very much, I think content is, this is a page out of your playbook, right? Content is so powerful in today's marketplace because if people are attracted to what I'm writing and what I'm speaking about, they're halfway to the sale before I ever interact with them.
And this may be understood by some people, but I think it's worth verbalizing out loud. The way that you write and the way that you call out to your ideal buyer, again, you wouldn't say this literally, but the article, the content, the headline, everything is basically saying, hey, if you're a fast growth, ambitious CEO who's ready to make moves, who's all in on your business, who is a visionary, innovative, you want to revolutionize your industry, we're using hints and seeds and phrases and ideas, even just overall ideas that would appeal to that kind of person and not appeal to the safety and security banker who might be hiding under his or her desk.
Absolutely.
The content and the framing and the presentation of that content is designed to pull in that kind of buyer and maybe even repel or scare the non-ideal prospects who are so focused on survival that growth is the last thing on their mind.
Absolutely. The very first post that I wrote when this pandemic started, and I am keeping a journal. I am on day 18 stuck in my house. The very first article I wrote, a video I shot, was Beyond Corona: strategies you need to stay motivated and keep your business moving, productive, come out the other side strong. And I immediately noticed who gravitated to that, right? And you can start to tell. So I very much am putting a stake in the ground that says, if you engage me, this is what we're going to do. And I do think that some people, it freaked out because they needed to be in denial. And some people were like, thank God somebody's talking about moving forward. And you can start to see who's ready to go with you. And it's just an easier, you're sharing the same value system. I mean, it's just easier all the way around.
So incredible. Well, we do have to have you back, not just for the topic that we talked about earlier, but probably for 4 or 5 different topics. 2 final questions as we wrap up. My final question is, how do people get connected and stay connected to more Meredith brilliance? And we'll give them some websites and some links and downloads and goodies. Second to last question before we get to that is, if people were to take one central idea from our conversation today about sales, about leadership, about succession, about the way to think about their business, think about their future, what would you hope that one central idea might be?
The one central idea would be, just because we're in the middle of this pandemic, would be to really, really be proactive about having conversations with customers and prospects and figure out where the pain points are right now. Produce content and products to solve those pain points. Do everything you can do to be relevant right now. I call it creating the runway, because in 6 months, 3 months, I don't know, a year, at some point the plane's going to take off. But if you haven't gone down the runway, you're going to be stuck in cement.
Totally love that. Totally love that. All right. Where can we send people? How can folks connect with you, your content, your website, your programs? We're going to link all of these up in the show notes right under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. All of these links will be waiting for you. Meredith, where can we send people?
You can find me at meridithelliotpowell.com. Pretty easy to remember that, right? Not a big name. But on there's a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. Immediately on the homepage, you'll find a button to go to a site that has all my tools and resources about moving through this pandemic. It's good for you to copy and pay attention to if you need to do something like that, or if you need the help, read and watch some of the videos. I've also got a quick start strategy for thriving in uncertainty. And even on the other side of this pandemic, you need to constantly be planning for uncertainty and make it work for you.
Awesome. And then LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, what's your social media flavor of choice?
I tend to live on LinkedIn and YouTube. You can find me on all of them, but LinkedIn and YouTube are the 2 where I tend to live a little bit more. And I do believe if you build your network, change your life. It's a motto that I live by. So if you reach out to me and connect, I will definitely connect with you.
All right, Meridith Elliott Powell, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was a tremendously valuable chat.
Thank you. It was great to be here, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.